For more than 2 decades, one man's voice greeted millions of Americans every morning. He was polished, trusted, and powerful, a household name whose charm seemed untouchable. He interviewed presidents, celebrities, athletes, and icons. He became a familiar presence in living rooms across the nation, someone viewers thought they knew. Matt Lauer wasn't just a TV host, he was a symbol of American morning television. And with a staggering fortune, estimated at over $100 million, he lived a life many could only dream of. To the outside world, he had it all: power, influence, respect, and wealth. But behind the flawless smile and calm delivery was a different story. A darker story that no one watching at home could have imagined. It all came crashing down in November 2017, in a moment so shocking it stunned millions. On live television, his own co-hosts, voices that had shared laughter and headlines with him for years, announced that Matt Lauer had been fired from NBC for inappropriate sexual behavior. Their voices trembled. The shock was visible on their faces, and the trust of an entire nation collapsed in real time. Overnight, Matt Lauer went from being one of the most powerful men in media to a disgraced figure, shunned by colleagues, friends, and the public alike. But this wasn't just a fall from grace. It wasn't a sudden misstep. It was the exposure of a culture of silence, complicity, and unchecked power that had protected him for years. Whispers in hallways, quiet complaints, ignored red flags, all of it had been hidden beneath the glossy surface of morning television. And when the dam finally broke, everything came flooding out. This is the story of how Matt Lauer rose to become the king of morning TV, how power insulated him from consequences for years, and how the Me Too movement finally ripped away the shield that protected him. This is a story about charm and deception, wealth and downfall, silence and exposure, and it's a story that forces us to ask difficult questions about trust, power, and the cost of looking the other way. Welcome to the Wake Up Lab, where untold stories come alive. This is the Wake Up Lab, where history and untold stories come alive. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon, so you never miss a story that will change the way you see the world. Matt Lauer's rise was almost cinematic. In 1994, he joined The Today Show as a contributor. Unlike many journalists who simply read from a teleprompter, Lauer brought something different. He was polished, confident, and most importantly, he had a natural charisma that connected with audiences. Viewers felt like he was speaking to them, not at them. Within 3 short years, NBC saw what they had. And in 1997, he was promoted to co-host alongside Katie Couric. This was the beginning of his reign. Morning after morning, millions tuned in. He interviewed presidents like George W. Bush and Barack Obama. He sparred with celebrities, joked with musicians, and delivered breaking news with a steady voice. The trust between him and the public grew so strong that people began to see him not just as a journalist, but as a part of their daily lives, and with that trust came power. By the early 2000s, Matt Lauer had become NBC's golden goose. His salary skyrocketed, eventually reaching $25 million per year. That made him one of the highest-paid television personalities in the country, more than many Fortune 500 CEOs. He bought luxury homes in the Hamptons, lived lavishly, and enjoyed the kind of job security most could only dream of. But while the public saw the polished, professional Matt Lauer, behind the cameras, a different story was unfolding. Quiet whispers began circulating among staff, stories of uncomfortable encounters, inappropriate comments, and behavior that blurred, or completely erased, professional boundaries. At first, these whispers stayed hidden. After all, Matt Lauer wasn't just an anchor. He was the anchor, NBC's crown jewel. He brought in hundreds of millions in advertising revenue. The Today Show dominated the ratings. In the television business, stars like Lauer weren't just employees. They were empires. And when a single man represents that much profit, the truth often gets buried. Behind closed doors, NBC executives allegedly knew more than they admitted. There were rumors of settlements, complaints, and moments of misconduct brushed aside. But as long as the money flowed, as long as ratings stayed high, the questions were ignored, and so the pattern continued. Some of the warning signs weren't even hidden. They were broadcast to millions of viewers. In 2012, during an interview with Anne Hathaway, who had just suffered an invasive paparazzi photo scandal, Lauer brushed off her distress and called it a wardrobe malfunction. Hathaway, with grace, pointed out that society shouldn't commodify a woman's unwilling exposure. But the exchange revealed something deeper: Lauer's lack of sensitivity toward women's privacy and dignity. In another interview with Sandra Bullock, he made repeated references to her nude scene in a film, joking that it was his screensaver, despite her visible discomfort. What viewers laughed off at the time now reads like glaring red flags, indicators of a mindset that disregarded boundaries behind the cameras. Things were worse. Female staff described a culture where inappropriate comments became normalized, and speaking out felt dangerous. Matt Lauer wasn't just a colleague, he was the star, the moneymaker, the man NBC would protect at all costs. Speaking up against him was like career suicide. Even Ann Curry, his co-host, reportedly endured professional torture before being pushed out of the show. When she tried to escalate concerns about Lauer's behavior, she was removed, while he stayed with his $25 million salary untouched. The message was clear: NBC would protect its star, not its employees, but walls built on silence eventually crack. And in 2017, one complaint shattered everything. The Me Too movement was already in full force. Harvey Weinstein had been exposed. The entertainment industry was being shaken at its core. Powerful men who had once seemed untouchable were suddenly facing consequences. And in November of that year, NBC received a detailed complaint about Matt Lauer's behavior during the 2014 Sochi Olympics. The allegations were serious. A young employee alleged that Lauer had invited her to his hotel room after she had been drinking heavily. What happened next, she said, was non-consensual. She wasn't able to give proper consent, but Lauer pursued sexual activity anyway. This complaint couldn't be buried. Not in the age of Me Too. Not when the details were this damning, and when it surfaced, it gave other women the courage to come forward. One former producer alleged misconduct as far back as 2001. Another said he had exposed himself to her in his office. Another described receiving a sex toy from him with a note about how he planned to use it. The stories formed a chilling pattern, and suddenly, Matt Lauer's charm, his reputation, his money, and his empire meant nothing. November 29, 2017, the world woke up to shocking news. Live on Air, his co-hosts announced that Matt Lauer had been fired for inappropriate sexual behavior. The disbelief on their faces mirrored the disbelief of millions watching at home. The man they trusted, the man they thought they knew, was gone, exposed in the harshest way possible. From that moment, his world collapsed. The $25 million salary was gone. His reputation was destroyed. Former friends stopped calling invitations to high-profile events disappeared. His marriage ended. The man who once thrived on attention became a recluse, hiding in his Hamptons estate, avoiding the spotlight he once commanded so effortlessly. And when he tried to make a comeback in 2019, with an opinion piece defending himself, it only made things worse. Instead of remorse, he sounded defensive, out of touch, and unwilling to face reality. The world had moved on, and it had no place for Matt Lauer anymore. But this story is bigger than one man. It's about the culture that allowed him to flourish, unchecked for decades. It's about NBC turning a blind eye to protect profits. It's about a system that silenced victims until the weight of one brave voice tore it down. And it's about a movement that made it clear: No one is untouchable. Matt Lauer's story is more than a personal downfall. It's a wake-up call. For years, he was shielded by fame, money, and power. But when the truth finally broke through, everything he had built vanished overnight. His fall wasn't just about misconduct. It was about a system that valued profit over people, silence over truth. It was about how long we're willing to look the other way before we finally demand accountability. And maybe that's the lesson here. No matter how powerful someone seems, no matter how polished their image is, the truth has a way of coming out. And when it does, it can bring down even the strongest empires. This is the Wake Up Lab. If you found this story eye-opening, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Who should we cover next? Don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe so you never miss an untold story that will change the way you see the world. Because in the end, the truth doesn't just set us free, it wakes us up.